This week, KYLIE Montigny. Did I say it right?
Yeah, you said all good.
Yes. If I ever say a last name right, I'm always very happy. So KYLIE joins us this week. We're going to talk all about your life. We're going to do a deep dive. KYLIE is a host, a producer, and as you can probably tell from the background for those that are watching, is it just I want to say a sports fan, but is it mostly the Dodgers or?
Yeah, mostly Dodgers, yeah.
Mostly Dodgers. Okay, so we're going to talk about a little bit about that. I want to jump right in and start with what you're doing now. So, the Power Girls, is that correct? The Power Girls
Yes.
Foundation. What is it? What do you do? And then I'm going to really ask you on how you got started with it. But let's start with who are the Power Girls?
Yeah, so Empower Girls is a nonprofit organization that came out just a few days ago, actually. I think it came out around Monday. Yeah, Monday it came out. And so it's about basically empowering girls in the media and trying to end gender bias and inclusion in the media. So because a lot of people are being discriminated, especially young girls and women in the media. So obviously that's kind of the mission of my podcast personally. My mission is to empower younger generations, especially young girls and women. That can be anything in the world. No one can stop them, and there are people like them in the industry. And this in general, there are people like them. And I wanted to bring more of that. I'm like, why am I just doing the podcast? It's something I'm very passionate about. So I started some creative thinking a couple of weeks ago, and I started this nonprofit organization. And our mission is kind of end gender bias and inclusion in the media, and to bring all these news and try to give access to like one-on-one presentations, Q&As, memberships, and so much more. And our model is if they can, you can. So that I'm very excited to start this whole thing. And yeah, everyone should tune in, and we'll give as many things as possible and make change.
That's awesome. I love it. And one, I'm a girl dad. Two, I love making more opportunities for women. And in fact, I don't know if you've seen some of the great guests that I've had. Specifically, I'm tying in the sports and women in media. Cynthia Freeland, Sarah Spain, Jamel Hill. Like we've had some really good guests. And so always trying to promote that, which is why I love what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. How is it just were you just kind of doing your thing and realized, hey, women aren't getting enough kind of media exposure, media jobs, and said, I want to do something about it? Or was there an incident that sparked it? Like how did it kind of come to be?
Yeah, so that all kind of started out like when I realized as I got older, I really not never see myself on a screen, never found myself basically on television. And like I come from a very sports type of family. So I grew up playing sports, everyone plays sports in my family. And I really never found myself. Like I was like, I am like 14 years old at that time, 13 years old, and I never realized what I want to pursue. Like let's just say sports journalism, acting, all those things. I never knew what I wanted to be. And I was like, this is something I kind of should know around this time, so I know what to pursue. So like getting started in it. And I was like, this is kind of weird. Like I don't see anyone that I kind of want to pursue. I don't see anything. But it wasn't until I became a Gina Davis fan that basically everything really changed. And I saw off her research that she has with her foundation called Gina Davis Institute on Gender and Media. They do all these research and all these things. I realized that like this is really an important problem. I'm not the only one that's kind of noticing this. And so I was like, this is kind of amazing. I like, I once I see all of these male characters doing amazing things in movies, I'm like literally sit next to my mom watching it. I'd be like, Mom, like, do you notice this male character is doing all the opportunities? Do you think a woman can do that? And like, I shouldn't be the one that's basically asking my mom. My mom should be really asking this to me, not me asking her. And it became a big problem. It used to bother me so much. And so I was like, if I want to really talk to people about it and really kind of spread what's going on, then I need maybe to start something. And I always wanted to be in the entertainment industry since I was young. So I was like, I should really start something in the industry or something involving that to let people know and get my voice out there because I was really tired of keeping my voice unseen, I would say. So I started my podcast in middle quarantine in 2021.
And what's the name of that podcast?
Talk of Fame podcast.
Say it again.
Talk of Fame podcast.
The Talk of Fame podcast, and we can find that where?
Mainly it's Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your podcast.
Wherever you find your podcast. Okay, so the Talk of Fame podcast, wherever you find your podcasts, and then the Power Girls. Is there a website or a place to help out with the foundation, or people get more information? I know it's a day old, but
yeah. And so so you can find on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us at PowerGirls.org. And it'll give you all of our things like all our social media handles. And we also have a website. So it'll give you the website on there too as well. So you can find basically any of our socials and news and stuff on there.
Okay. Love it. So you mentioned the whole family's into sports.
Yeah.
You played sports. What was the first? Give me the first. I'm going to ask you some embarrassing stories too, by the way, just so at least one. I get everybody to share at least one funny or embarrassing story. You get to pick. But how does your sports interest start? What's the first thing that kind of piqued your interest there?
Yeah, so obviously I mentioned before, I come from a very big sports family. As I grew up, I played baseball. I grew up playing baseball in my neighborhood in Pennsylvania. And I basically come from family watching sports. Me and my father would watch like sports or something every day, mostly baseball or football or whatever that's on. My family's Phillies fans and stuff, so watch obviously Phillies games and all of these sporting events together. And it wasn't until about 2018 that I really became a sports fan. When I grew up, I wasn't really a sports fan. I was basically just watching with my dad for fun. This is something to do, but I wasn't really interested. And so, like in 2018, I just remember going to a Phillies versus Dodger game down in Philadelphia. This was even before I became a Dodger fan in the first place. And so I just remember going to a game in Philadelphia, which my mom got tickets from her work. And so I just remember heading down Philly. We were watching the game. It was Chase Utley's final games in Philadelphia. And so obviously I was a huge Chase Utley fan. I grew up with them and everything. Obviously, from being a Philly sports fan, I obviously knew who he was. And so I went down there, and there was something that really clicked in me after going to that game. I really started loving sports more, especially because of Chase Utley. Chase Utley literally changed everything for me. I wouldn't love sports because of him, obviously. And I just remember after going to that game, I just remember turning on the Dodger game after and just started watching every Dodger game since. And I wouldn't stop. And honestly, I started to become a Dodger fan. Even like my parents, when I told my parents, I'm like, I'm a kind of a Dodger fan now. And they're like, holy.
I was going to ask you, growing up in Pennsylvania, going to Phillies games, and then how you become. But now it makes sense how you became a Dodger fan. Probably doesn't make you very popular when you're watching at home, or are they okay?
Yeah, no,
they haven't gotten over it yet.
Yeah. Oftentimes I go downstairs and I see the Phillies on downstairs, and you're like, my father will look at me and go, "Are you a Phillies fan yet?" I'm like, "This doesn't mean I'm stopping supporting the Phillies. Like, even though I'm a Dodger fan, I will not stop supporting them, even though like Dodgers were more."
All right. So, have you been? What are the Dodgers? What do you think the Dodgers' chances are this year?
It depends. It's like we recently just lost Walker Buehler to an injury, which really kind of sucks for a rotation. Obviously, these Walker Buehler is probably one of the best, not only the best, probably the best in our rotation. And so currently, so it really sucks to see him gone for about like 6 to 8 weeks. I think it's supposed to be. So it really kind of stinks for our rotation. He's like the best in our rotation. So it really kind of stinks, and I'm looking, hopefully they can bring up some guy or do like a little trade or something. Because obviously I think the trade deadline or something in a couple of weeks also. So I'm hoping maybe we can grab someone to replace him for a couple of weeks while he's out.
So I want to go back to your podcast. So we are talking with KYLIE, who is the host, producer, and a sports fan, and has the Power Girls Foundation, but also has the Walk of Fame podcast. that's available everywhere. So what kind of things do you cover on the Walk of Fame podcast? What are, any any I gotta ask, any embarrassing or funny moments on the podcast? I always tell everyone mine because it's the easiest one. The first the first interview I ever did on on a different podcast that I was doing years ago, I accidentally asked one of my guests a question that had nothing to do with them. So I thought
Oh,
in the intro,
really?
you know how you and I had a little discussion before we went live? Well, we had a little discussion, and for some reason, I thought she said, "Don't forget to ask me about this." That's what I heard. I don't know where it came from. So about halfway through, I asked the question. She goes, "I have no idea what you're talking about."
Oh
And I
my
went, "No,
God.
you're not working with," and I don't even want to bring it up because I don't want to say, but she's like, "No, I have nothing to do with them." I was like, "Okay, well, I'll just edit that out." So have you had any of those moments? Or
Oh, absolutely. So on my Talk Fan podcast, obviously, I honestly have a lot of embarrassing moments that I wish I probably would have said or would have said, obviously. So I just remember one moment during an interview with Tyler Brodsky, I think his last name is. He works for the Red Sox and he does all these things around the Boston area and all these things and covers Red Sox as well. He's also an interviewer. And obviously, I remember going to Chase Utley's bobblehead night the one day, and I mentioned on the podcast or an episode that I went to Chase Utley's bobblehead night or whatever the night was or whatever. And I variously said that I was stalking him during when I was there because like I was down, we got box seats for that game, and I was basically sitting next, like going, walking, sitting outside his box where he was sitting at, and I was basically waiting for him to come out and just keep looking past where he was sitting. I was like, "Is he coming out? Is he not coming yet?" Like I was basically stalking him. And I immediately shut down my podcast, which was so embarrassing. And now my family always mentions, "Oh, remember when you said you saw Chase Utley on your podcast? Remember that?" And I'm like, "Oh my God."
you have to be careful. I think you were patiently waiting to meet
Yeah.
Chase.
Yeah,
Is
I
probably
actually met him that night though,
oh,
so
you
it was
did.
kind of worth
So the
it.
stalking worked.
Yeah, stalking kind of worked.
As long as you don't tell him I've been stalking you, it's happy to meet you. I think that's okay. That's hilarious. So what other? So do you do what are on the Walk of Fame? Obviously, you had someone from the Boston Red Sox. Is it entertainment? Is it sports? Is it everything? Like, what are some of the topics you most enjoy talking about on it?
I basically talk like everything, like sports, entertainment, all those things. Like I like to cover mostly entertainment because since I love the entertainment industry since I was young, so I love to learn about people's experiences and all those things. So I mostly like to cover entertainment, but I like to really cover everything like sports and everything.
All right, so let's dive into the we talk so much sports on all my shows, so I want to get away from sports. So the entertainment, what are maybe some of the most recent? Is it movies, TV shows? Is it like entertainment gossip? Like what is some of the most recent things you've been talking about? Because we don't know. We talk about sports here all the time, so we want to be more fluent in other things.
Yeah, so on this episode I filmed before I jumped on. It's coming out later today, so it'll be out like already out. With her name is Liv, and so we were talking about the new J Lo documentary that came out this week. And so I obviously am a big J Lo fan. I'm a huge J Lo fan, and like what can I say about JLo? She's one of my biggest inspirations. Like I just love her so much. And so when we were all talking about her documentary on Netflix, and we all talked about what she said and how much inspiration and all the things she puts in her documentary. And like I really like 100% recommend her documentary Halftime on Netflix, and we're all talking about that as well. And so I recommend watching Halftime as well as that.
So
And
I'll pause you there and ask for those that we haven't seen it yet. So the JLo's documentary is out at halftime on Netflix. Is there something that either you didn't know that what shocked you the most that you found out maybe in the documentary, or something that you just maybe already knew but you're like, I still can't believe that you know she eats 12 salads a day. I'm just like, just I can't believe that that's true.
yes, I'm trying to think now. There's so many things that surprised me during the documentary. It made me cry at times. I'm like, oh my God, this actually happened. But the things that really kind of shocked me the most were like how much effort and time she put into the halftime show for the Super Bowl back in 2019. And like basically like she literally was training basically every single day and all these things. And she was basically working her butt off and all these things in the NFL. She really wanted to make like an effort for women and Latino girls and all these things. These Latino girls are basically seen differently. They're always like they're always
Like
getting
in movies and
criticism.
television and stuff, they're kind of stereotyped.
Yeah, yeah. And it's in general, like in general, they're always getting stereotyped and all those things. So she wanted to basically bring more representation during the Super Bowl for them and everything. Because obviously that Super Bowl with Shakira and her, it's all Latino and like both Latino backgrounds and all those things. So that basically was bringing something a little bit, but she wanted to kind of bring a little bit of the heritage to the show. And they're like one of these like gates or something to bring more things or whatever. And the NFL like didn't want them to do that. Is I guess I didn't hear like why like not allow them to do this. Obviously, I think because of their backgrounds and all these things, so they basically blocked them to do this specific thing in the Super Bowl. And which I thought like, what the heck is going on? Like, why can't they allow doing things with their heritage? I understand there might be some rules, obviously, the NFL, and based off of some restrictions for a halftime show, I didn't understand that. But I was like, why block them based off their heritage and what they want to show for them?
Well, the NFL is not known for. It's funny how we ended up back at sports. The NFL is not known for, especially since the Justin Timberlake, Janet Jackson thing. They're trying to be very safe and vanilla, which unfortunately makes for a boring halftime show. I think they're starting to get out of that mold though, so we might be okay. So I just want to remind everybody the Walk of Fame podcast is available everywhere: Apple, Amazon, etc. The Power Girls Foundation can be found at powergirls.org, or you can find it on Facebook, etc. But it is powergirls.org?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you can type in Power Girls on Google or put my name in it. It'll be on my social media stuff. I have like a bunch of links, so it should be on my social media.
All right. So if you're looking for it, it's KYLIE Montigny.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
2 out of 2. You'd be surprised. Like I said, I say everybody's last name wrong, so I'm going to say it again since I'm getting it right. KYLIE Montigny. You can search her, find the Power Girls, find the Walk of Fame podcast, because this is Kylie's story, and now you're more fluent in it.